Welcome everyone to the Northern Illinois University Art Museum's virtual artist talk this evening, How to Spell USSA with exhibiting artist Zachary Cahill. I'm Stuart Henn, the museum's education coordinator, and it's my pleasure to welcome you and introduce our speaker. A few notes about this presentation. This Zoom event is being recorded so you can rewatch or invite others who are not able to join us live today. Once closed captioned and formatted for web viewing, you can stream a recording of this presentation by visiting niu.edu/artmuseum/events. I'll post all URLs in the meeting chat. To minimize interruptions, everyone has been muted except our presenter this evening. Feel free to ask questions in the chat, and I'll help moderate those at the end of the presentation, time allowing. Programs of the NIU Art Museum are sponsored in part by the Illinois Arts Council Agency through federal funds provided by the National Endowment for the Arts, the Friends of the NIU Art Museum, the College of Visual and Performing Arts season presenting sponsor, Shaw Media, and the NIU Arts and Cultural Fee. This exhibition and programming are part of the College of Visual and Performing Arts program Rejuvenation, an artistic journey from trauma to recovery. Art Heals. This evening, our presenter, Zachary Cahill, is an interdisciplinary artist based in Chicago. Cahill's work examines the nature of propaganda, politics, nation building, religion, and society. His practice focuses on a fictional nation, the USSA, as a metaphor for investigating real narratives through installations, paintings, sculptures, performances, and writing. His work has been featured in the Berlin Biennale, Three Walls Gallery, and the MCA Chicago. And his writing has been published in Art Forum, Frieze, and the Journal of Visual Culture. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce and turn our screen over to Zachary Cahill for our artist talk this evening.
Of course I'm on mute. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Stuart. It's really, really nice to see everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you to the Illinois Art Museum and especially to Joe Burke for including me in the exhibition. Wow, so interesting to try to do talks this way. Yeah, so as Stuart was saying, for a little over a decade now, I have worked on a country called the USSA, and I guess it's called a fictional country, but I guess in my mind originally I thought it was what is often called a parafictional, or both is and isn't fictional, maybe a hypothetical or propositional country. And it really started off years ago as I had been working on a project on a historical character or person, Felix Dzerzhinsky, for about a year and a half, who was the founder of the KGB in the Soviet Union, and kind of just a pretty nefarious figure. But I did a lot of research on him and discovered he was a bit of a poetic soul. Anyways, had my head in that world for a long time, and after being away for a while on a residency, I posted something on Facebook that said "back in the USSA," and little did I know that would eventually become a project that's taken up a decade of my life and doesn't seem to have any signs of waning. I should say that when I conceived of the country, I thought at the outset that if you're going to build a country, you would need some infrastructure. And so I thought that the various exhibitions I do were attempts at gesturing to the infrastructure that the country would need. And the first kind of bit of infrastructure that I, for some reason, decided that I should start with was an orphanage. And I guess I had kind of conceived of the country as a kind of living being, and that it would have a kind of time arc, and that it was good to start with children. But a lot of it was motivated, and a lot of my work is motivated, I guess, with a kind of embedded critique. And in this case, at that time, which was 10 years ago, I was noticing, particularly in contemporary art and especially performance art, a lot of artists, not a lot, but some artists that I knew were just talking about, were listing people as materials in their projects. And that struck me as both kind of funny and wrong. I always kind of thought crayons and plaster were material, not people. People are human beings. So I thought I'd reduce that to the absurd and try to imagine artists, socially engaged artists, I guess, kind of that started an orphanage in Chicago. And of course, there was a kind of edge to it, and it was meant to be provocative. And it started, and I was lucky enough to kind of perpetrate a kind of hoax in an academic journal at the time called Rethinking Marxism. And I guess I wanted to kind of set up in advance of an exhibition a kind of story, right? And I was very much at that time a kind of follower and devotee of the artist Pierre League, who really kind of opened up ways of thinking of what an exhibition could be. And he liked to think about it as not just ending when you opened. And I thought that was interesting, to think about an exhibition as a temporal thing as well as a spatial thing. So not only did we perpetrate a hoax in print, but I working with another artist, Philip von Zweck, we did a conversation for the podcast Bad at Sports, in which we did like a pretty straight up interview about me as an artist, my life, and then we got to this portion about this orphanage that was started on the South Side. And I have to say, it's a very different thing talking through a hoax, or I guess you could say a lie, than writing it. Anyways, that all happened right before our show opened. It was like my first big solo show, and it was in Chicago at Three Walls. And this is what people encountered when they came in. Maybe a bit different than what they had expected. It was a pretty bright and colorful exhibition with sculptures and drawings and posters. And in that show, the bear figured in the show quite predominantly. I guess in part because I was thinking about the political moment at the time, and Barack Obama had been elected president a couple of years prior, and there was a kind of rhetoric of people accusing him of being a communist, which was obviously absurd. But I started thinking about it and taking them at their word, and the idea that maybe Chicago was a kind of holdover from an earlier Soviet time. And it kind of made sense because, this is where the International Workers' Day started with the Haymarket riots. And then, of course, we have the Chicago Bears and the Cubs. So the bear just became this totem animal that I was interested in exploring. I want to kind of move quickly through this show and get to some more current work, but I think it's to understand that each exhibition is a kind of a critique I'm making, and an infrastructure or a subject that I'm thinking about. In this case, an orphanage, ideas of human capital, which I don't think I mentioned, but one of the things I was saying with the performance artists of listing people as material, that harkened back to some neoliberal economic concepts of human capital that that I thought was interesting, that artists were making similar kind of claims about human beings. Anyways, there was a lot of kind of mother imagery as well. Obviously, I was dealing with children. So at that time, I started also kind of a series of, there's another one, What is the Bear Search for Meaning? I was also really obsessed with Werner Herzog's Cave of Forgotten Dreams at the time, and his Grizzly Man movies. So I was thinking a lot about bears and teddy bears and how they're cuddly, but also bears in real life are actually very scary and dangerous. Oh yeah, S is for seance. I don't really talk a lot or get a chance to talk about is a seance practice that I have. It's really integral to the work I do. Not a lot of people see this work, so I'm sharing it with you all because why not? But also because this work happens at midnight usually, and it's hard for people to get to. It's really intentionally set at the witching hour. And the seances usually conjure up historical figures on a historical day. So for instance, relating to the historical avant-garde, so I might look for a date like October 8th when Lenin gave a particular speech, and often that speech would come out of me and then morph into something maybe bizarre and weird. But usually they always kind of start like this, with some vodka set out before the seance proper begins. I guess you could say I like that. I don't know, it's not really about people getting liquored up really, but maybe there's something about showing up someplace in the middle of the night, imbibing a spirit. Yeah. And then at midnight, they're generally led into, and I've done a couple of these and they change and, with each iteration, but then they're led into a kind of pitch dark room and a speech is given. And it's usually quite scary for a while. I think people don't know what's happening. At this point, I had lit a match in this one performance. And then some sort of transformation happens. In this case, I became a bear. And led a procession through the West Loop. Yeah, and there's always a table involved of some sort because of the reference to the seance and the date that the thing is happening. And so there's these kind of different moments of the seances of like a really scary moment, a kind of didactic moment, a processional moment, and then a kind of what I think of as a kind of Charlie Brown sing-along moment. It's also, I've done a couple different ones with various states of undress. This was at the MCA in 2014. Me and 3 other performers. When the black lights came on, people realized they were in the midst of some fluorescent performers. And this is another kind of sing along. So I guess I wanted to show you that because most people don't really see that work, and it's always attendant with the exhibitions, or I usually ask for it, and it's not always the easiest thing to do because I asked the curators, I want 3 things. I want total darkness, vodka, and fire, and sometimes I'm successful, and sometimes. In this case, we use sparklers. Yeah, so not every time I get what I want. G is for gift shop. Shortly after the 3 Wall show, I did an exhibition at the Chicago Cultural Center where I had proposed an exhibition in the gift shop of the center. And the idea was, I had this kind of cranky critique thing of people making a distinction between art and commodities. And I was like, I'm going to make artwork and I'm going to mix it up with the store, and people are going to be confused about what's for sale and what's art. And I thought I was really smart because I was doing that, and I got much to my surprise, it got accepted, and I was very excited about that. But it got accepted because the gift shop was closing, and they're like, you could do the show now. It's closing, so come on in, Zach. And so I was very excited. But within a couple of weeks of the show opening, the vendors all repossessed all their material. And so I was left with a ghosted gift shop at the Chicago Cultural Center. And for some reason in my kind of imagining, it conjured up this figure that I called Ghost Bear. And Ghost Bear went on to haunt this shop. And you know, I made t-shirts of Ghost Bear. I made all sorts of figurines and baseball caps. I thought if you're gonna have a gift shop, you'd definitely have to have a paper lantern. So I was just playing on motifs that you would see in the context. And strangely, this was a project that was actually like really political, because the cultural center was going through a lot of upheaval, and I got my first kind of hate mail and really negative review, and people thought that I was somehow responsible for closing the gift shop, which was a drag. But this gives you an idea of like what the figurines were like. This one's called Tourist Trap. I mean, they're kind of gnarly. Obviously, it's a bear mauling with a hammer and sickle coming out of the bear's back. Yeah. So that's the gift shop. Again, in this space was also a kind of video that I had kind of created that was this like PDF of Ghost Bear sayings, like Ghost Bear likes tourism, Ghost Bear does this, Ghost Bear does that, along with really grating. I didn't think it was grating. I was just playing the electric guitar, but people accused me of making really nasty music. And so people really hated the show, which I'm actually kind of proud of. It was because of the emergency that happened and the situation at the cultural center. I was given free reign to do whatever I wanted. And so my, the devil kind of came out in this show. And I really love the show. Though the hate mail thing was hard. Yeah. So the USSA is getting a little bit older. You know, I kind of think of the commodities section as like midlife, buying and selling, getting ahead. And I started a project centered on the theme of wellness. And again, if I had a critique to lodge, it was this notion where people would say, well, if it's art, it's not, if it's therapy, it's not really art. And of course, this really applies to this exhibition. But I always thought that was kind of a ridiculous distinction, and was really kind of built out of people that are doing stuff professionally and for the market. People just need to make art to deal with life, I think, on some level. It's a really basic human need. So I was agitated and wanted to make work in response to that notion. And I was very fortunate at the time to have been included in to have a show at the MCA. And what was kind of motivating that work was thinking about wellness, and that led me to thinking about like the Thomas Mann novel, Magic Mountain, and I thought, well, what kind of work would be made at that time that he was writing? And I had remembered the kind of German expressionist, the Die Brücke movement, and Ernst Kirchner in particular. And I love that. And I also thought if you're gonna do something about a wellness center and therapy, it seems to me that maybe painting is like an activity. So that if the last show had stuff about tchotchkes and merchandise, this one would focus a little on painting. And kind of to my surprise, I kind of fell in love with painting again, thanks to the show. So it kind of started as a conceptual conceit, and there was a lot of different kind of things I was thinking about in terms of genre of a wellness center. I thought there'd be like a welcome area, they'd have flags, they'd have a place to check in. And I worked through kind of different genres of painting, landscape painting that people might be doing. I thought the center would have like a collection of masterpieces. Not that this painting is a masterpiece, but it's based on a Rembrandt painting that I adore called The Conspiracy of the Baptians. And I did kind of riffs on more famous works like that. This painting is pretty important to me, and so much as that it was the first time in working with painting that I started to get a sense that like this gonna seem like a dramatic claim, but I could do anything with painting. That I was trying to do in performance or installation. There are certain things about modern technologies of paint, the way it works on your eyes with fluorescence and reflective paint, and then the introduction of language into the paintings. Yeah, I just all of a sudden got so excited about what I could do with painting. This is kind of like the corporate wall, this plexiglass watercolors. They're photographs of paintings. This is a close-up of one. So there's a kind of psychic disturbance, I think, with the color choices I'm making to kind of register kind of maybe a certain unbalanced individual. Here, I thought the center would have, portraits of famous people at the center. Like they would have their kind of hall of famous people. And of course, they'd have an architectural model of the center, but it's all kind of like a bit charged in a different way. I guess I should say too that writing is a really big part of my work. It's not a side thing, though it often maybe gets read that way. And so I'm really thankful to Joe for including some of my writing in the show, which I hope to get to in a little bit here. But I thought that maybe I'd read a little bit from a text that accompanied this work. And again, I think of the writing as a kind of like soundtrack to the exhibition, right? That at one time, viewers can have this in their mind as they're seeing the work, what I'm about to read. And also, I like the idea that people could take the work home with them, right? Very hard to take a painting home with you, but a piece of writing, you can kind of sit with it and return to it in a different way. So I'll read this one. It's maybe a little long, but I'll try to get through it. It's called Confessional Poetry Night. And I think of it as a kind of postcard from a moment in my life, a pretty dramatic moment in my life where I was dealing with some hard things. And I thought I should take a snapshot of it so I could remember it. This is almost also like close to 10 years ago now, when I had lost some family members. So here goes. What does it mean that Joe has been alive in my dreams? Very alive. I feel like he's visiting me. I know it sounds crazy, but it's like he followed Mom here to watch out for her, like he's helping me take care of her. I need to see someone, a shrink, but I want it to burn, to let it into my work. I don't know if it will be good art. It's just my reality, and that's all I can draw on. I hate confessional poetry, writing it or reading it. I especially hate my own. Other people's confessions can be interesting, but for me at least, art is a way to escape my own head, sticking your interiority into something else. That sounds like a crass metaphor for sex, but letting it meet the world, know the world. But I'm loath to seek help with coming to grips with Joe's death and my mom's illness. It's an Irish thing, a Mick thing, as my Aunt MJ would say, perverse conception of self-reliance. I want to get well, but seeking help feels like a betrayal. Besides, it's not something I have control over. External events do what they do, and I'm affected by them. It's no mystery why it hurts. It hurts. I don't care if it's fashionable or contemporary. I want to make art that's true, even if I end up telling all sorts of lies in the process and offending people. It's all lies anyways, and lies get a bad rap, generally speaking. Joe Wilson, the idiotic racist congressman who yelled at Obama, "You lie." What if the president replied, "Yeah, so what's your point?" That all human communication shares kinship with the lie, the fabrication seems plain enough. The problem is, how does the lie make others feel? Like shit? Proud? Deceived? Loved? Are your feelings really just another set of lies you tell yourself? Like the sad confessional poem I'm spilling out. It's not poetry if it's confessional, really it's therapy. Therapy is not art, so the common wisdom goes. But what does common wisdom know about art anyways, if art is haughty, as those who would claim that want to press art into the service for the common man, whoever that may be, then the common wisdom does not apply. 3 cheers for the snobbery that recognizes therapy as a form of art. Perhaps it's not the highest form, but is a form nonetheless. And what is more, it is a form that resists hierarchies. Ipso facto, therapy is the highest form of art. Take that, revolutionary elitists, dumbass. The common man is dead. Long live the common man that reads Robert Lowell and Shakespeare's sonnets. A question then arises, what will I be when all is said and done? The problem, to be successful, does one need to be an asshole? Often appears that way. But at the end of the day, life on this planet amounts to a single question. Was I an asshole? How did I treat others as I made my way through this life? Success is no success. Success is something else. Dad said, you can't control what other people think. True, but that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about are those times when you're alone and the questions, voices, doubts, and demons come calling, and there's no one to answer but the night watchman of your own soul, who has seen all that you've done, recorded all your thoughts. What will he say? Where will the verdict fall? Are we all assholes in our own mind? If not, should we be? That is, if you're not, have you clearly discerned your own complicity of the evils that animate our world? The cheetah eats the gazelle. Maybe the cheetah is not evil. Maybe it is cruel. There is a difference. Still, it has something to do with the asshole, doesn't it? The cycle of life revolves around the asshole. Food and shit. Life is cruel, but where is compassion? Can we be compassionate? What does it cost us to be compassionate? Can we think outside of a cost-benefit analysis? Can we ever truly be selfless? Don't we always act in self-interest? Looking after my mom is selfish, isn't it? She's my mom, not yours. I'm writing my way out of it, the guilt and sadness, and looking for help, looking for art to make some sense of it all, something of a larger cultural import to redeem the banality of my depression. My stepping into art with my mother feels exploitive, but she put me up to it from an early age and encouraged me to be an artist. My brother isn't appealing to an audience to help him understand his pain, share his pain with strangers. For him, it's more real. He's taking care of the finances, and I'm just muddling things up. But honestly, I could give a fuck what you think. I'm just trying to get through this process, this journey. I believe is for euphemism the healthcare industry uses. Old age, sickness, death. Yep, I might have skipped a whole bit. Shit, sorry. Well, that's okay. old age, sickness, death, get through it without losing it, which I'm sure sounds like hyperbole to you. But if I were honest, and that is what is being attempted here, then guess what? I'm right fucking there, on the edge, close to completely coming unglued. I mean, I'm seeing dead people, and not only when I sleep, but when I'm awake. I'm not hallucinating. I want to see them. Kitty said that my seance performances had to do with my desire to hold on to my parents. She is right. That revelation rocked me. The obvious stuff always does. The seances started as a kind of joke, and now it feels real. Not kind of real, real. Like the feel of a sweater real, the warmth of skin real. And it scares me. What if what you thought was just a joke was fucking real? But maybe that is the only way to approach death. Through the joke, the game, Day of the Dead. I don't know. Is art all something like this, a glorified coping mechanism? But everybody finds coping strategies, not just artists. So art isn't just a coping device. Just like everything else, coping is used to analogize art. Art is always a something else. We have coping plus something else plus love, something else plus hate, something else plus politics, something else plus expression, something else plus etc. But maybe it's not always about surplus with art. Maybe art takes something away, a minus. Art takes the life out of life, makes it more manageable. Maybe it adds and subtracts simultaneously. Maybe life, whatever that may be, needs both addition and subtraction. Dial it up a little, dial it down. But do you even care? This is just me in pain. But here's the thing. This pain's coming for you too. And nothing I say or write can prepare you for what's coming down the pike. It'll destroy you. Like me, you'll hunt for ways to keep it together. You'll feel vain, stupid, and ill-equipped when it washes over you. And the waves of sorrow will pummel you to pieces. They'll keep coming. And you'll write and write or do whatever it is you do, but it won't be enough. Art will fail. It'll just keep coming. All I can say is I love you. Whoever you are that is reading this now, whether you're living or dead, I love you and I want it to stop for a second so that you can catch your breath. I don't know for how long. It is possible. I love you. Hold on. So, yeah. So the infrastructures kept coming. I won't go into this one too long, but this was the State Farm, was another project I did, riffing on the insurance company, which was founded in Southern Illinois. And then I started working on a state church, or what I kind of conceived as the afterlife of this political body that I was working on, heaven. And I was really drawn to thinking about religion because religion is at once kind of the most conservative zone of society, and yet at the same time supports radical political causes, whether it's the solidarity movement in Poland or political theology, the IRA in Ireland, and so forth and so on. So I got really into thinking about religion, and this was a project I did in New York City. I did 2 shows with the Assembly. I'm not going to go into a lot of this work, but I'll give you a little idea. I, this work, I was really thinking about comic books, particularly the work of Jack Kirby um, at the time. And so the color palette shifted a little bit. The vibe of the work changed a little bit. These are some figurines from that, some idols. Um, and I wanted to try to reset the project a little bit because everybody kind of knew what the USSA meant. They would say, oh, well, that's the Soviet Union and the United States of America. And I was like, oh, it's not that simple. And so I like the idea that maybe they could be something else and people had misinterpreted what those letters were, and that maybe they were just heads of these alien creatures or gods. And out of that project grew my first and today only novel called The Black Flame of Paradise, which is like a pretty long piece of writing to accompany that work, written in a epistolary format style. And that really delves into, well, a lot of things, but I thought like the most holy thing I can think of is at that time is basically trying to take care of my mother when she was sick. So it actually deals with that experience a lot more than the piece of writing that I just read a little bit ago. I did a postal service as well. That is a longer project to go into. But I tried to set up a kind of relay system between Chicago and another location in Canada. And again, I was really fascinated by postal service when I learned the history and how integral it was to, building the United States of America. Anyways, I think I'll move into some more of the current work and try to show some of that. Yeah, out of the church project, I started thinking about, sacred gardens. The Black Flame of Paradise is a kind of reference to a kind of garden moment. That's the title of the novel, sorry. Yeah. And I thought, well, if something was growing, if the letters were, how do I say this? Well, I'll just show you the paintings and then maybe read the manifesto really quickly. But I started making a lot of paintings of flowers. This one's called the God of Sleep. This one's called Mooca Flower, Ghost. And I had this thing, well, after my mom passed away a couple of years ago, I had like an artist block. I've never had that before. I always am pretty productive and make stuff. But in the months after she passed, I had trouble making stuff. So I thought, I had kind of started this series, but I thought, I'm just going to make a square, go to my studio and make a square and paint this flowers. And I'm not going to think too much about it. But the flowers are the USSA for me. That one's called Nightshade. Sometimes the titles are really long and I have trouble remembering them. This one's just called Yellow Flower. That's the long title. And often I just snap these as soon as I finish them, so they're really unprofessionally photographed. This one's called I'll Never Be Pretty. Forgot what that one's called. I also started doing a series of flower faces, like drawings during the lockdown when we were at home, and I started making all these, flower faces, weird flower drawings. And they get more and more absurd and abstract. But it wasn't obvious to people why I was painting flowers and what they meant. And so I penned the manifesto. I'll share that with you. People are incredulous when I tell them that paintings and flowers are my most political work. I point out to them, I don't mean they are the most political work, but they are my most political artworks. That I consider flower paintings to be my most radical statement, and that propaganda comes from the Latin root to propagate, to spread. That in a sense, all my work is about propaganda. And these flowers are the purest form of propaganda, its core. Remember, it was flowers that the demonstrators put in soldiers' guns when they were protesting the Vietnam War. For me, my flowers are pure ideology. They are the force behind the letters of the USSA. Like Dylan Thomas's poem, The Force That Through the Green Fuse Drives the Flower. As I worked on the Assembly Project, the state church of the USSA, I thought a religion would need a sacred garden. That garden is where all these flowers grow. I am interested in how flowers are relegated to kitsch and how that somehow, if everyone paints flowers, then they aren't serious or intellectual because amateurs paint them. To me, that's precisely why flower paintings are political. Everyone can do it and does. Children, people in nursing homes, coffee houses, flea markets, airport galleries, hospitals. It's not the exclusive province of the 1% of the contemporary art world marketplace. I'd argue maybe it's not so hard to make serious art about serious things. Maybe it's just hard and represents just as much risk to make art about seemingly mundane and frivolous things we all share. Maybe that constitutes another type of risk and another type of reward. Flowers are weird and alien-like and sexy and erotic, and for some people borderline offensive in their blatant exhibitionism. I love that aggressive expressionism in flowers. I love their biology. I love that something so beautiful could make you uncomfortable. Or if you're the type of person who isn't made uncomfortable by the frank display of sexualities of flowers, well, that says something else too. I think a political movement could harness that energy as a counterattack against the forces of evil that are animating our world. Maybe others have thought about this already. Maybe this is not my idea. Maybe I'm just an agent of all these flowers. Maybe this is a manifest. Maybe this manifesto is already manifest and spreading natural propaganda. A language of flowers, a political language that is sexy, erotic, offensive, aggressive, built out of a machine of desire, composed of violent laughter, gentle, able to bend in the storm, able to bend the storm, surprising, fashioned from images of life and death, tired, curious-eyed listener, a silent partner who sings in the night, dreaming speechless glow, a face without a face. Beautiful. There's my studio. That's what the garden looks like when it's not tended like an exhibition. So yeah, so I had written the manifesto because I felt like people might not understand why they were political or why I was doing it relative to my work. And this past winter, you know, I had been painting flowers, like I said, pretty obsessively, just going and setting the square and getting to work. And then these skeletons started showing up in the work. This one's called All the Flowers in the World. I can't remember the title at the moment. This one's called The Flower on the Other Side of Life, by which I know you. Everyone I know is struggling. I can't remember. I'm always crying. Anesthesia. Yeah, I can't remember the title of that one. Grief Eaters. Can't remember. Catharsis, I think that one's called. Can't remember the title of that one. This is a really long title. I can't remember it. Sorry. I should have it in front of me. This was the most recent one. You can tell it's still wet in the paper. Paper's buckling. But if the flower manifesto was written because it was, I didn't think it was apparent why I was painting flowers. I thought maybe I'd write a little something about the skeletons because maybe it was so obvious why in the middle of this past winter that skeletons started showing up. It's called Notes on Narcosis, or Why Skeleton Paintings. It's very brief. Now they will want us to move on, to be healthy, to put the pandemic behind us. But I don't think I've even caught up to it yet. In some sense, it is a train that's rushed by. And yet, I'm still, part of me died and is dying, and will always die from the novel virus, the death of the new death. I won't ever understand it. For you, trapped on the other side of life, health ever blooming, recklessly optimistic and optimizing. Flowers eat the soul, and I, trapped on the other side of life with you, stumble around, bewildered, trying to find a way. Was I on mute the whole time? Stuart, can we unmute everybody?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. Wow. Hey, so many nice people. Hi, nice people. Thanks for coming. Aw. So many nice people. Well, you don't have to ask questions, but if you have criticism of my criticisms, I'd be happy to hear them. Or if you just want to like go have a drink, I wouldn't begrudge you that either. Great. I could call on people, Stuart. I could see everybody's names.
Well, I'm not seeing any comments in the chat. Feel free, if you're bashful, you can ask your question in the chat and I'll help moderate those as well.
I just want to say hi to Holly and Zach. Hey, Thomas. Bisma has a question. I'm just kidding.
Zachary, I have a question.
Okay.
You use the idea of seance and sort of supernatural connections in part of this sort of body of work that you mentioned earlier. And then towards the very end of the presentation, we're talking about how the skeletons and skulls started to appear. Was that an unconscious sort of appearance, or were those elements, were you thinking about that because of the current events and news, and that's why that imagery started to appear? Or was that something you were like, oh, this is kind of happening?
Not really trying to be coy, both.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's interesting, the kind of supernatural thing, like I was saying, a lot of things start as a joke, but more and more, and as I've getting older, I do find myself kind of slipping into something like quasi mystical. I often find that a lot of the work I make now, I wake up from it as if a dream. Like when it's done, it's like I just woke up. It's very weird, and it's very ritual like for me. But yeah, I mean, how could you not? I mean, there was a moment where, you know, and it's still thousands of people every day are dying from the virus, and we're living with the body count.
Yeah.
Yeah. On some level, I was just like, well, you know, and also like I always felt like that was part of the flower work too. There's a kind of funerary aspect to them, even though they're celebratory in many ways. Yeah, I mean, I guess all my work, you know, is processing something like death. I mean, not all of it, but there is the kind of, that's a, yeah. I mean, in preparation for the talk, I was like, wow, my work is really kind of a bummer. But I you know, I think I don't really know what else to make, and I guess, yeah. Anyways, does that answer the question? Oh, hey, Bisma.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Good night. Bye. They're having serious time.
Zach, I have a question. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, okay, cool. So USSA is, could you explain that a little bit? Like,
Sure.
I heard it in the talk, but it's more about coming together than coming apart, perhaps.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, on some level, it's really just the dumb thing of like the United States and the Soviet Union, right? But it's also kind of a hopeful thing for me, like kind of what if you could take the best of both worlds? You know, I mean, I was a child of the Cold War, and I had kind of grown up in Reagan America, and the Union was talked about as the evil empire. And I was really fortunate as a young person in a different life to be able to travel to the Soviet Union with a kind of, I was like a wrestler in my younger days. And, you know, like you would imagine, just people getting through their day, you know, and it just was at that point, and I didn't realize it was like after Thomas, after the Three Wall show, somebody asked me like, what are you, like Russian, or what's the deal? And that experience of traveling to the Soviet Union and having like my eyes opened as a young person to the way ideology works in our society, you know, it changed me. And I guess that's where it kind of, on some like prehistory, grew out of, is a kind of skepticism of ideology and propaganda. And nevertheless, you know, there was aspects of the Soviet project that I, you know, was interested in and a fan of, trying to make a better world. You know, like people, sorry, it's probably getting too carried away here to talk about it, but like the Romanovs ruled Russia for 300 years, one family. I mean, imagine if the Trump family ruled the United States for 300 years. So it's not like the revolution came out of nowhere. Obviously, a lot of bad things happened, really, really horrible and horrific things. Don't get me wrong. But you know, the idea of social justice, which often is a term that's used against people as like a derisive, like you're a social justice warrior. I always think that's hilarious. Yeah, of course. What else would you be? You should be a social justice warrior. You should go, battle for, I don't know. It's funny to me that that's used against people as a kind of derisive slur. Anyways, does that answer your question?
Well, a little bit. Yeah, it's fascinating that okay, so we're probably the same generation, and you had this experience of being in the Soviet Union as it existed, which is also super fascinating. And so as you talk about your work, there's a really unifying element to what I'm hearing. And the other part of it is that, like, I take care of my mom too. So there's like another element to what you've been saying. But yeah, so I'm just clarifying what, the statement USSA actually means. And which I think is really about empathy.
Is really what?
About empathy.
It is interesting. What I did show at the Berlin Biennale, which of course is like the 0 point for this project. I was kind of finishing up a mural, and a lot of the East Berliners, this was the question. What do those letters mean, Zach? What's that all about? Of course, they experienced it in a completely intense and traumatic real world thing. And I said, well, for me, it's a bit of like, it's like a collage, I said, a collage, but I'm using a collage of two nations. And this one guy, he said to me, one nation and one former nation. And in a very wistful and nostalgic way, because, there is a kind of, I can't really speak to it, but I got a sense that East Berliners experience some, I don't know, bias, I guess, as, because they were part of the regime and did things differently. Yeah. Yeah, but empathy, I mean, that's the idea, really. I don't know. I mean, in some ways, it's not really about the letters. It's not really about anything other than like some kind of utopic thing of like wanting people to, get along somehow. Maybe. And that, Thomas, I think you're right. Like that, my only way to the, like, I always kind of say that, right? I don't know what the letters mean, but now as I've sat with the project, for me, they're more about the first two, right? Us. And when you say it slowly, I mean, I kind of, us and us and us, I think like the only way I can get to us is through, sadly, through me and my personal experience, and try to connect, like you say, with you and your own experiences on some level. That's all I've got to work with.
Yeah. Then it's clear. And then it's also like sort of beautiful and explosive, and I'm really down. With the flowers and everything else. It's just like, yeah, let's just like, yeah, I understand now more clearly.
On one level, it's okay that it's ambiguous too. Like it's a project that has teeth, even the flowers, I guess I'm a nice enough guy, but in my work, I like to let some of the aggressive and critical stuff out, yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm a guy too, but I might be more about the flowers. So, hey.
Zach, I have a quick question. If I can jump in real quick.
Questions, I mean that in the best way.
Earlier when you were talking, I can't remember what if you were responding to another question that was being thrown in your direction or what, but it was regarding kind of like the overall practice, not maybe kind of a specific project per se. But you made the comment, I wrote it down, I kind of circled it. You said, well, you know, I don't know what else to make. And I found it to be really, 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 I felt that actually. We've talked about this kind of like life service, or a life in service to, or a kind of like life practice. But there's something else about, I think, when people kind of feel called to do a thing that they don't know what else to do, or know what else to make, which I feel like sometimes maybe like the work of the artist is always finding something to do. But then there's an interesting kind of thing that happens when you kind of think about not knowing what else to make, not in a defeated way, but in being like, but like, what else would I actually do? You know? But I'm just curious, like, do you at all feel, burdened by that? Or maybe not all the time, but are there moments where you do kind of feel maybe overwhelmed or burdened by kind of like that task of doing a thing, or not even doing a thing, because it's like there is nothing else to do, so to speak. But like, because that is the work, that can actually be very burdensome. I don't know, does that make sense at all?
Makes
I know
total
it's kind of a
sense.
jumbled question.
Like, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm locked in my own country. How do I get out? Yeah, no, sorry. If it felt like that, I think I'd be done.
Mm.
But you know, there are times where I'm like, man, it'd be so much easier if I just like, if like the Wellness Center project, if I didn't sign all those paintings at USSA, it wouldn't have been so hard for, you know, like at one point it wasn't clear that show was going to go through because of the letters. Like, letters were problems for people. And you know, Devin, you know this, that I my day job, my old day job in particularly, I got to work with and meet lots of artists. And I remember I had this one chance spending time with you know, Thomas Hirschhorn, and I ferrying him around, and we were in the car, and I was like, I don't talk to people about my work, but I had this one moment. I was like, I shouldn't do it, but when am I going to get a chance to talk to this guy ever again? And I brought this thing up about the letters, like how, like, it's causing me problems. What should I do? Like, people are like, think I'm like some sort of communist, or like they think I'm joking about like some horrific historical thing, and that makes me feel awful. Like, should I ditch them, or like? And he said this thing to me. He said, Zach, he's like, you know, I had some collectors in my studio, and they told me I would never sell this work because it was so intense or whatever. And he's like, but that's not my project. And he's like, we all pay a price for the work we make, right? It's a choice, and we pay the price to do it. And I don't know, that really resonated with me. You know, like, yeah. So yes and no, it's a burden, but it's also like, for me, it's like when there was something else that comes along, and that's the country project is no longer, like, I'm not just gonna do it because of like my rep, or you know, like, it's feeding me. And when it stops, you know, I guess I've been lucky to have kind of been in a zone where it feels rich enough to draw on different things and address. It allows me a lot of flexibility, I guess. Like, I can do stuff about, like, you know, commodities, or I could do stuff about like growing older, and you know, like, whatever a country is, I guess. You know, like, what is that? I don't even know. At some level.
Yeah, I feel that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And that's what I meant. Your questions are important, so they're always thought-provoking. Yeah. Green screen's pretty nice, right? I was pretty excited about that. Well, what do you think, Stuart? If no one else has any other pressing concerns, maybe we could say good evening and thank you, and hope to see you all in real life again soon.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all
Oh,
for
go
joining.
see the exhibition. Sorry.
Yeah, I have a little plug for that. So yes, thank you all for joining us this evening for our conversation and our discussion. If you're watching locally, this exhibition runs through May 15th. You are welcome to visit our website, niu.edu/art museum, to schedule a free, timed, masked, and physically distanced admission. Portions of the exhibition, very well, thank you, The Arts as a Means to Well-Being, will be viewable in a virtual format online at niu.edu/art museum/exhibitions, once photographed and added to our photo streaming site, if you aren't able to join us in the galleries in person. If you'd like to discover more about Cahill's work, you can visit his website at zacharycahill.com. A special thanks to our guest presenter this evening, Zachary Cahill, and thank you all for tuning in this evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, Zach.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.